trigger warning for today's episode. It's about politics. So, that's your warning. Now, let's talk about this. And the greatest trick that politics has played, and possibly the most damaging thing that it's done. Politicians, movements and things like that have taken a very solid set of pages from marketing about how to ensure loyalty to their points of views. And this is not limited to one culture or one country or one political perspective. This is everywhere. And this is not new, but it has gotten so much more prevalent that we are in an age now of hyperpartisanship where everything is a political issue. Things that shouldn't be, like, the candy drawings on M&Ms, people having intense political and cultural debates about these things. I think it's a bad candy. If you want to have a debate, talk about the nutrition information on that. Why is this happening? How is this happening? What has happened to create such an atmosphere of polarization that nobody can agree on anything, nobody can get anything done, and it's causing breaks in families, in relationships, in neighborhoods and cultures? Here's the trick. It's identity. Politicians and political marketing experts and organizations figured out very quickly that if you convert your political positions, your ideology, into identity, it is very, very hard to dislodge that. It is very hard for someone else to persuade you otherwise, because you incorporate a concept and turn it into your identity. Now, let's talk about identity briefly. What is identity? It's who you are. It's who you identify as, right? I am male. Right? I am old. I am Korean. My heritage is Korean. I am American. Those are sort of identifiable characteristics about me. And because those are so personal to me, there are things that someone could say or do that would be hurtful to me, probably hurtful to you. And as a result, anyone talking about those things would get rejected, right? If someone came up to me and said, "Hey, you gook," right? That's a racial slur specific to Koreans. And I would probably disregard what else that person had to say, unless it was, in a known context. That is an attack on identity. If I were to call you a certain name that is insulting to your heritage or your sexual orientation or to your gender identity, you would probably get really upset. I mean, back when I was a kid, calling someone gay was a slur, right? This is like 40 years ago now. That was a slur. Now, it's a very common word because the LGBT community has reclaimed that. There are people, for example, in the African American community, the black community, they will use certain language with each other that they've reclaimed that doesn't have the bite that it does, but anyone else using it, probably not okay. That's all identity. What politicians figured out is if they can bind their causes, their points of view to your identity, you will reject everything that does not go with that. You'll reject different points of view. You'll reject people. You'll reject messaging. You will reject everything that is contrary to their point of view because you've put it as part of your identity. If you now say, I'm a liberal, I'm a conservative, I'm a Tory, I'm a Whig, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, whatever the label is, if you bind that into your identity, now the politicians figured out, we can get you to reject everything else. We can get you, we can ensure your loyalty. We can take your money, because they'll say, so-and-so politician, they're saying this about you. They're saying this about you. They're coming for you. Give us money. And that works so well. Again, this is not limited to one party or one nation. This is everywhere because political marketing has gotten very sophisticated. But more harmfully, that binary classification of us versus them does not leave a middle ground, right? The reality probably is there's people who are for an issue, there's people who are against an issue, and there's a whole bunch of people in the middle who don't care, right? This is the problem that political marketers are trying to solve. There's like 10% of people who really care, there's 10% of people who really oppose it, and 80% of people are like, I don't care. But the moment they can split your identity and say, okay, well, the people who are on this side believe this, and the people on this side believe that. Now you're like, okay, well, if my identity is as a Democrat, well, I guess I have to go on to that side. Or my identity is as a Republican. I guess I have to go on this side. And suddenly there is no middle ground anymore because they've used identity to lump everything together and pull away the middle, right? It consolidates power. This is the trick. This is what the politicians have done. And it's very difficult to overcome because changing someone's identity is very difficult, right? Imagine trying to say, oh, you know what? I'm going to try and stop being Korean. I'm going to try and stop being male. I'm going to try and stop being, older. I'm going to try and stop being heterosexual. Really hard to do that, right? You can believe it. People can believe anything. The mind is very flexible. It's a very flexible system, but really hard. Can you imagine someone saying to you, well, try not being Jewish anymore, or try not being Christian anymore, or try not being Muslim anymore? And you're like, take a hike, right? Take a long walk off a short pier. And the politicians have figured this out. Try not being liberal anymore. Try not being conservative anymore. Try not being in support of Palestine or in support of Israel. Right? It's so much a part of your identity now that they know they've got you. They know they have programmed you to knee-jerk reject anything that is not part of your identity and the identity that they have asked you to construct for yourself that incorporates them. So what's the antidote? The antidote is awareness, self-awareness. When you see something, ask yourself, is that really what I believe, or is that what somebody told me to believe? Right? Is that really a part of my identity as a person, or is that part of a label that comes bundled with the identity that I've decided to adopt? Right? Where, say you're a Republican, but maybe you really, really don't give a crap about transgender people. It's like it doesn't affect you. You don't care about it. It's not your thing. If you see somebody talking about that, say, well, do I actually care about that, or is that something that someone else is telling me to care about because it benefits them? Right? There will be things that you absolutely do care about, right? If you're a Republican, you probably care very much about your right to keep and bear arms. And if that is part of your identity by choice, then that is. And someone trying to take that away from you, yeah, you rightfully should be like, that's not okay. But it is building that awareness of when we see something, we feel something, when we feel something that feels like an attack on us, the antidote is to stop and go, is that really an attack on who I am as a person, or is that an attack on the identity that a politician would like me to believe so that it favors them? Every culture, every country, every society in the world is going through this now. Things like these lovely devices, right? They amplify this. They reinforce that sense of identity that is really not us. And if we're aware enough and clever enough and smart enough and confident enough in ourselves, we can pull apart what we've been told to believe versus who we actually are. It's a worthwhile exercise because it means you're a lot happier, because suddenly things that everyone else is saying to be upset about, you're like, what's wrong with you? You can be a lot happier because you recognize when someone is trying to play you versus you making decisions for yourself that benefit you first and not some wannabe puppet master sitting behind a desk somewhere. That's the show for today. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon. If you like this video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button.